Welcome to the Agency Uplift podcast, where we go past the highlight reel and dig into what actually builds a strong digital agency. That's clear foundations, better decisions, and the courage to scale on purpose. I'm your host, Sean Lang, co-founder of Social Commerce Club and advisor to agency owners just like you. Today's going to be another solo episode. We're going to be talking about different roads to $1 million of annual revenue. So different kind of pricing strategies. There are a lot of different ways to get to $1 million, but it really helps to be very thoughtful, very intentional with how we do this. We want to make sure that we're picking the right way, the right pricing strategy, the right lane that's going to match our team makeup, how we do operations, and how we're positioned. So first, let's look at kind of the basic math here. So $1 million per year divided by 12 months is actually $83,333 per month. Okay, so we can do some quick math then to see how many clients we need depending on what we're charging. So there's a bunch of different lanes that we can look at. I think of these as kind of like the three growth lanes. So the first one is the volume lane, which is kind of lower retainers, but more of them. The balanced lane, which is kind of right in the middle. And then the flagship lane, which is not many retainers, but they're very high value. And so we're going to break down kind of what that looks like. So first, starting with the volume lane, this is kind of like $2,000 to $4,000 retainers. Now, depending on what you're charging, whether it's $2,000 or $4,000, et cetera, you need anywhere from 20 to 40 clients concurrently to hit that $1 million. So that might sound like a lot of clients to you. So if we actually break it down, if you have all of your clients are paying you $2,000 per month, you need 42 clients at a time throughout your entire year to hit that $1 million mark. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is, but the benefit of this model is that each client is only actually 2.4% of your revenue. So if you lose a client, it's not really a big deal. You can always replace that with another client. The other benefit to the sales model is that your sales friction is low. It's easier to get people to say yes to a lower cost. Depending on the positioning, because obviously you don't want that lower cost to signify that there's lower value as well. So there are specific ways to position it, but low sales friction. But the con to having 42 clients at any given time is that your operations load tends to be very high, right? There's a lot of things going on in the background because you're managing 42 clients. That's 42 relationships, 42 accounts. That's your team having eyes on 42 clients at any given time, right? Now, it's really important to look at the team makeup required in terms of, what kind of people do you need on the team? What roles do you need? What level of seniority? At this level, when you're charging $2,000 a month, you don't really need super high level expert people. I mean, it's good to have them, but you don't need them. You can get away with people who are like coordinators, more junior type specialists, and then generally have like one account manager per 10 to 12 accounts. Depending on what the service is, you might actually be able to get really efficient, especially with AI. And you might even be able to have like one account manager per 20 accounts. Although, as someone who has hired a lot of people and interviewed a lot of people as part of the hiring process, a lot of people would come to me saying, the last agency that I worked at, I managed 25 accounts and it was just kind of chaos. And I only felt like I really focused on 5 to 10 accounts, and then the other ones kind of just ran on autopilot and they would churn out and then I'd get new ones. So it really depends on how you choose to set it up and the kind of client experience that you want to give. And so talking about client experience, if you have 42 clients paying you $2,000 a month, you want your client experience to be quite developed, right? We want to make sure that we have tight SOPs, especially for communication. We want to have it very templated out. And we also want to make sure that we're tracking, Net Promoter Score and NPS, so that we make sure that those 42 clients are happy, because 42 people can either say good things about you or 42 people can actually say bad things about you. So you don't want to create a high volume of bad will. You want a high volume of goodwill. The perceived value that you're delivering at this level of price, it's not as high. It's just not going to be as high. You're going to be delivering, clear deliverables and, showing some kind of light ROI, but chances are they're not looking at your costs on the balance sheet as nearly as closely as if you'd be charging more. So where this model wins, again, is it's easier to sell when when clients churn, it's not nearly as big of a deal, and it's definitely much more acquisition friendly, right? And acquisition friendly, I'm talking about in terms of if somebody's actually looking to buy your agency, if they see that you have a tight system built out, and you're able to bring clients in with ease, manage them with ease because you have the systems dialed in and tight, then that's a good thing. But things to watch out for, because I see a lot of agencies trying to do this, and they're doing it incorrectly. They're trying to build this high volume agency without these systems built. Things are not tight, so there's actually a lot of chaos. So you need to watch out for a high volume of, client support tickets. A lot of context switching if you don't have your lanes really, really dialed in. Your margin can disappear very, very quickly if you are managing 42 clients and your scope is not really, really tightly protected, right? If people are doing a lot of revisions in addition to the work that's being delivered, but scale that across 42 client relationships, that's going to be quite a big issue in the long run. So the types of services that we would expect to see in this range are going to be like single channel services. So it could be SEO, it could be maybe just Google ads, and kind of low level Google ads, maybe for like a service business spending under $10,000 a month, something like that. So now we move on to the balanced lane. And this is where I see most agencies that have been around for a couple of years. They've learned that it's really, really hard to charge less if they haven't really developed the systems. And if you listen to this podcast at all, I talk to a lot of agency owners and I audit a lot of agencies, and a lot of agencies just don't really have that infrastructure built to really be as tight and productized as you'd want to be when you're managing 42 clients. So the balanced lane, again, where I see most agencies, is charging between $5 and maybe on the high end, more like $8,000 per month, but let's say more like $5. So you need anywhere from 10 to 17 clients concurrently to hit $1 million. So let's kind of break this down. So if you're charging $5,000 per month, you need 17 clients. Now your risk of losing a client, or your revenue loss when you lose a client, is still not that high. It's 5.9% of revenue. So you can still, it hurts when you lose a client, but you're not worried, about the existence of the agency. There's no existential dread when you lose one of these clients. However, now that you're charging $5,000 a month, your sales friction has increased. I'd say this is medium level sales friction. You're charging more in the ballpark of what everybody else is charging. So you're getting compared a lot more to your competitors, to your peers, but also there's more perceived value in what you're delivering. Your operational load now, as opposed to very high, when you're managing 42 clients, we're only managing 17 clients now. So that's actually not nearly as bad. So your operational load, I'd say, is between medium and high. At this point, the team seniority that you need is, somebody that's maybe mid-level seniority and maybe someone that's a little bit higher level seniority. And then at this point, you have, one account manager per 5 to 7 accounts is generally what we see. And then your client experience that you're delivering, since you have a lot more resources per client, your client experience doesn't need to be nearly as templatized, as built. It should still. I mean, it's a superpower to templatize and systematize it, but it doesn't need to be, because your account manager is only having to focus on 5 to 7 clients at a time, as opposed to 10 and upwards of 20 in the previous model. Now, in terms of perceived value, again, you're being compared to everyone in the space that's charging around what you're charging. So you really have to frame the entire engagement around ROI and be showing proof on a regular basis. And this is where agency relationships go to die. Is if you just can't prove that ROI, then clients will eventually leave. So where this sort of balanced pricing wins is that as long as you're managing, fairly tight operations, it's better margins and better client experience, because your people can spend more time per client, which is very, very important. But things to watch out for here is that your pipeline still needs to be pretty consistent. Actually, that's one thing that I didn't mention in the high volume model, is you need to have a very, very full pipeline to keep those ops coming, to make sure that as clients churn out, you have new ones to replace. So same with this one, you still need to have a very consistent pipeline, not nearly as bad as the high volume model, and then this is where you really need to start, at all levels, but you really need to start guarding against scope creep. still, because this is where your team can start to feel like they have a lot more time to spend on clients. And if you don't have things tightly defined, then what you'll find is that they will start spending a lot of time on their favorite clients, which is good, but only if it's profitable. If it's eating away at margins, that's not a good thing. Okay. And then the third lane, this is the flagship lane. This is where everyone says that they want to be. And I mean, our agency has grown. Its Social Commerce Club has grown to the point where we have some flagship clients. It is a different ball game. So this is retainers anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 per month, which to some of you might sound absolutely insane. I've met agency owners that are charging over $50,000 per month, but that really depends on the type of client that you're working with. So at this level, depending on what you're charging, it's anywhere from 3 to 9 clients. I would never want to have $1 million per year agency with only 3 clients. That would keep me up at night. Like if one client leaves, that's 33% of our revenue gone overnight. No, thank you. But let's break it down. Let's look at what this looks like in terms of the bottom end. So $10,000 per month, which I think is actually really, really nice retainer size. So at $10,000 per month, you need 8 to 9 clients. And when a client leaves, I mean, this is where it starts to get a little bit scary. But if a client leaves, you're losing between 11 and 12.5% of your revenue. So that's not going to end the business, but you might be looking at pausing resources or laying people off, or maybe you have contractors who are part-time so that basically their hours just decrease until you have another client and then their hours increase again. Where this starts to get tricky when you're charging $10,000 per month is your sales friction will increase because it's a much bigger sale, right? So your sales cycle might be longer. But also when we're talking about sales friction, this is where positioning becomes absolutely critical. You need to be able to have the positioning that justifies you charging $10,000 per month. Now, often just the price alone is part of the positioning, but you need to have some kind of track record. You need to show like this, we charge $10,000 per month, and that is with good reason. We have case studies, we're an authority in the space, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is where the operations load starts to get really, really nice because at this point we have 8 to 9 clients, potentially the same team size, but 8 to 9 clients. And so our operational load is actually low to medium. Team seniority is going to be much more senior at this point. We're going to have maybe like a director level strategist. We're going to have senior marketing experts. And of course, we'll still have contractors or more junior specialists who are able to execute on the platform. But in general, the team is much more senior because we're dealing with much more senior clients. We need to give that kind of client experience. And that's why we actually need a very high level client experience. This is where we're starting to get really into like white glove territory, where we're really, really making sure that the client is never wondering what's going on. The client is always being served deliverables, ahead of time before they're expected. We're trying to really knock their socks off with the quality of work that we're delivering because we're really trying to make sure that if we're charging $10,000 per month, I should be paying more for this for the level that they're giving me. I mean, that should always be your end goal at the end of the day anyways. But often we fall into firefighting mode and we never really get there. In terms of perceived value, I mean, this needs to be, value at the executive level. So you're probably dealing with somebody in the C-suite and you're making them look really, really good to the rest of the leadership team, right? In terms of like where this is going to win, I mean, this wins when we are positioning ourselves as the premium option, right? At this point, we are clearly head and shoulders above the majority of the rest. But things to watch out for here is, again, when a client leaves, that concentration risk, right? We need to make sure that we are spending a lot of time on client experience, that we are planning for contract renewals well in advance, and that we're proving value, and that when we are renewing this contract, that the client is actually excited because we're going to continue to add more value. We're always justifying what we're charging. And in fact, we're making the client think like they should be charging me more. So it's important to pick your lane, right? So a lot of agency owners that I talk to are just charging whatever they think that their prospects will pay. And this is what we have to do at the start. But if we are trying to get to $1 million per year, or again, you can apply this math to $2 million per year, $5 million per year, $10 million per year, et cetera. we need to plan this proactively. We want to make sure that that our expectations are in line with reality. Like, you might be thinking, I want to charge $10,000 a month, but your ICP might actually be the kind of client that will never pay $10,000 per month. And so you need to design your agency in accordance with what is actually realistic here. Okay. It's very, very important. And you can't price yourself to a level where your operations can't deliver. So a lot of agencies, again, they get really stuck with these low price retainers because they think that they can't charge more, but they're also not systematized enough to actually build an agency with these low price retainers, which is why it actually can be quite a bit easier to get to that balanced level, that sort of middle $5,000 per month retainer level, because you don't need to have as insanely dialed in operations in order to deliver on that promise. It just means that you need to make sure that you have better people. And I talk a lot about the importance of, core values on hiring better people and systematized accountability and rule scorecards and all of that. So every pricing tier that you choose is going to be a specific business model. You need to make sure that you pick the best one for how you're positioned, how you deliver service, and how you have your operations set up in the back end. I hope that this was helpful. And one last thing is I set this up in a spreadsheet. I call it the $1 million pricing guide. I think that it's something that's just really, really helpful to look at and really get you thinking, are we priced correctly? Are we set up correctly based on our pricing? Do we need to make any shifts? If you want this, just connect with me on LinkedIn and ask me, just direct message me and ask me for the $1 million pricing guide. I'm happy to send it over to you. I think it'll be pretty helpful. All right. See you in the next episode.